Hi, my name is Brian Venton and welcome to another pastoral chat that I call Words of Hope. The theme of today's reflection is living with divisiveness. Now, there's a fair bit to unpack here, so let's get into it straight away. Our text from 1 Peter 5 says this: "Humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he might exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you." Now, one of the great tragedies of our recent cultural circumstance has been the way people have been pitted against each other over a virus and a medical procedure. Families are in argument. People are being judged and condemned, being demeaned, ridiculed, despised, criticised and mocked, simply because they question a narrative and push back against what they believe are injustices. None of us have avoided being impacted, and I suspect the residual emotional impact will be significant well into the future. Divisiveness doesn't suddenly just go away or heal itself overnight. Now, the more I looked at this scripture, the more I could see how relevant it was to our cultural circumstance. Now, let me unpack it a bit. First, it addresses the issue of division by stressing the importance of becoming, not being humble, but becoming humble in the midst of our circumstances. When emotions are running high, someone has to move towards another person with grace, reasonableness, and humility in spirit. Personal vindication nor argument is ever a solution for division. The idea of humility here is passive, not active. It is not something we do so much, but rather something that is happening to us. It means literally to suffer yourself to be humbled. In other words, there is a divine process in play here whereby through suffering our character becomes refined so we can become increasingly humble. Now, even though you and I might feel our position statements are right and justified, and they might yet prove to be so, healing can only take place between persons if at least one person in a divisive space chooses to become humble before God and move towards the other person in grace. For me, I don't know about you, but I've always tried to maintain a stance that I would not allow my position on an issue to come between my relationship with another person. Maintaining community, to me, is far more important than trying to prove a point and end up living in a fractured relationship. But notice that there's something else here that is comforting to know that my view of reality pales into insignificance compared to God's ability to exalt me at the proper time. Vindication is God's responsibility to effect in my life, not mine to create or demand for myself. Now that's why Peter says, God will exalt you at the proper time. Now, the second take home from this passage, and we may not realise this, but another impact of divisiveness is that it exacerbates anxiety. Now, I know we touched on anxiety last week, but I want to come at it from a slightly different angle. I've had a number of people say to me recently that they are scared about the future, fearful of what is happening in the world and what it might mean for them. Parents are homeschooling in record numbers. People looking for new shared living arrangements on acreage. Some are moving interstate to escape government overreach. Others are growing their own food and participating in food sharing groups. Some are going off-grid and trying to become and live self-sufficiently. Others are downsizing and building tiny houses. Others are wanting to create new tribes, and the list goes on and on and on. None of these are in and of themselves problematic, but the sheer proliferation, I suggest, of these interest groups is an indication that people are restless, they're unsettled, and perhaps uncertain about what the future may hold for them. In a word, they are anxious. They can see our culture is being fractured, divided, and torn apart, and want to do something about it. Now, the question that this raises is, where are we going to place our hope? In whom or what do we trust? No matter how stressed your circumstance may be, God cares about what you're going through. We're exhorted to cast all of our anxieties on the Lord because he cares for us. Now, the idea of to cast is to deposit with in a once and for all act of putting or depositing all our concerns in God's hands. Now, I remember on a personal note my grandfather relating the story how in 1929 he was dying in hospital with scarlet fever in the midst of the Depression. He was fearful of not making it through and wondered how his wife and 4 young children would survive. And as he was pondering his uncertain future, in through the open window flew a little sparrow, which danced and pranced on the end of his bed. And as he was watching the bird, in that moment, he immediately recalled the words of Jesus from Matthew 10, which goes like this: "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny at the market? Yet not one of them has fallen to the ground outside of your Father's sovereign care or awareness. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows." From that point on, he says that his health slowly started to improve. Why was that? Because he had no rational reason to be fearful, worried, or afraid, because God had his future in hand, and it was in God whom he trusted and rested. So, be anxious for nothing. God cares about your circumstances more than you could ever realize. Deposit your anxiety in his care. He will make it up to you, I'm sure, with interest. This is pretty powerful stuff. So, to whatever degree you are facing divisiveness or its impact in your life, remember it is God who has your back. Ultimately, you'll be vindicated if you are on the side of truth, and at the same time, we need not be anxious with all the divisiveness that is happening around us. We can rest in God's sovereign purposes for our lives, no matter what is happening around us. Now, I trust that you've found this helpful, particularly for those of you who feel you are the object of scorn or unjust criticism. At some point, you'll probably be vindicated, and I trust you're able to be strong in the midst of what you are going through. Again, if you need to chat with someone, then feel free to contact me. My phone number is on the video, and I'm always on for a chat if you want to call. And until we meet again, I look forward to chatting with you again next week. God bless and have a good week. Bye.